Hey everybody, it's Tony D with the Screenwriter's Rant. I'm going to try to do, this is like my fourth take. I'm going to try to do this one in under 20. So, Sargon of Akkad did this video. He's got a new channel called The Symposium, where he took two videos and broke down the Jedi religion and why it kind of doesn't work. I'd like to expand upon that from a screenwriter perspective and where I think the Jedi religion went wrong in terms of creating a screenplay that would make sense and would move the story forward. So I think in the original trilogy, the Jedi religion works. It's perfectly consistent. It starts with Ben Kenobi introducing it to Luke. He's kind of, the implication, Kenobi's kind of the last guy, but he's kind of not. And that, you know, he could take up the sword like his father and become a Jedi Knight, and Luke becomes a convert. In the second movie, we see the training with Yoda, and that Yoda is, a master, and he teaches Luke an important lesson. You know, when Luke says, "I don't believe it," and he says, "That is why you fail." So in that context, we see the training, we see, the master breaks down the student. He breaks him down physically, he breaks him down mentally, and gets him to see the truths. He gets him to face his own demons and start to see truths. Even though his training's incomplete, which is, again, it's a screenwriting device to put the odds against Luke during The Empire Strikes Back. He leaves anyway to save his friends, which he sort of kind of does, but at the end they sort of lose. And spoilers, if you haven't seen Star Wars, obviously there's spoilers here. And then in the third movie, we see Luke become full Jedi and become a full hero. But more than that, he surpasses everybody by taking the most evil Sith Lord in the universe, Darth Vader, and bringing him back to the light and reviving, basically saving Anakin's soul again, saving his father's soul. And that's a huge accomplishment. And in those three movies, the Jedi religion is consistent. Now, keep in mind, we don't see a ton of it. We get glimpses of it in the first one. We see some of the training, and then at the end, it's like, okay, so you get these levitating powers, you get the light sword, you're kind of pure of heart, and you get to become a ghost at the end. The prequels that Lucas did with The Phantom Menace immediately goes right off the rails. Now, I don't know if Lucas forgot or he just didn't care, but he forgot what made the Force, that it was supernatural. It was beyond our understanding, which is consistent with religions, right? The Buddhists want to obtain enlightenment. They don't have a device to measure how much enlightenment is in your body. If they did, why would they waste their time up on the mountains meditating? They would just run around with their enlightenment wand and find out the most enlightened people and just learn from them, I guess. So the midichlorians are a dumb idea. If I had to go back in time and save the prequels, I would immediately go, George, you have to get rid of the midichlorians immediately. Just delete them. Don't put them in the screenplay at all or ever again. Because once you grounded the Force in midichlorians and a device that could measure them, a whole lot of questions erupt. So like, why doesn't the Jedi, who are very powerful in his version of events, why don't they just go around the Galactic Republic and scanning everybody and finding all the people with the biggest amount of Force? Like, why don't they do that? That would be a sensible thing. You could get all the best students. In fact, you wouldn't even have to run around the galaxy. You could just send out the machine and say, hey, we offer a reward. If your kid is really big on the Force and has got a ton of these midichlorians in his body, send him our way and we'll give him a free education and you'll get, 500 credits or whatever it is for money. I think it was credits. I want to say credits were, that was always the generic futuristic money in the original trilogy. What I guess Han Solo was stacking on that cart at the end of the first movie. So you want to keep it simple, that kind of stuff like money. So in the prequels, you get rid of the midichlorians and that saves you some. But the problem is the setting itself is all effed up. The Jedi are too powerful. They shouldn't be involved with the galactic government. on any kind of official capacity. Why? Because religions and governments just don't mix. Now, Sargon, in his videos, he calls them the, I think he calls them the Jedi mullahs or the galactic mullahs. And that's true, right? Because that's kind of what the Iranians have. They've got the mullahs and then the government, and who has the real power there. That doesn't bode well for good characters. Good, pure characters are not, the hero of a story is not there to govern. That's not what heroes do. They're out slaying monsters and saving princesses and doing all that cool, high-flying, thrilling adventures kind of thing. So I would have said, no, you can't have the Jedi Council in a great building where they have this amazing view. You put the Jedi Council in a shack somewhere in the middle of the woods. Oh, and by the way, the Republicans, or the Republic, they're not great fans of the Jedi. They kind of tolerate them. The general working man loves them because the Jedi run around and do great things for the poor, and the working man, the average person loves Jedis. But the government, nah, they don't like Jedi. Those guys cause trouble because with their wacky religion, they don't want to start any wars. And sometimes government have to start wars, or they have to fight wars. Those guys don't want us to have slaves, or at least they shouldn't. That was a big problem in the prequels. Everybody called it out. It's like Qui-Gon and Kenobi are like, oh, here are the slaves. Hey, slaves, how you doing? No, that's you got to have against slavery on that list if you're going to keep your good guys pure, and you want to try to keep them as pure as possible for the battle ahead, or at least their religion as pure as possible. Not them specifically, but you certainly want to at least mention it. So maybe you could say, well, we're trapped on a planet and we can't really save all these people. We're just going to have to try to do as best we can and sneak out of here. Maybe we'll come back with a whole bunch of Jedis and free these people one day. But that was a big overlook. You can't just have slavery and have Jedi go, well, there's some slaves. I mean, that's just horrible. That's just horrible. You need to address that. And the way I would have addressed it is I would have said, look, George, you want to make this more Pulp Fiction. They don't land on this planet and have car trouble. They crash on the planet. Maybe they're sabotaged. Maybe they get shot down, but they crash and they survive, and it's very thrilling. But they got a problem. Everybody on the planet is going to know eventually that the Queen is on Tatooine, and the planet is full of a bunch of smugglers and criminals and bounty hunters, and those people will ransom her. And they know they're with two Jedi, so the two Jedi has to get the magic space carburetor so they can get off the planet before they're found and the Queen is killed. So off they go. And they have to keep a low profile because everybody on the planet is after them. And that's how you do a thrilling story. They're going through this marketplace, but they're in disguise. And then somebody says, hey, is that a lightsaber? And they start getting into fights and they have to escape. And everywhere they go, it's dangerous. And there's a sense of, oh my God, if we don't get off this planet, we're all going to be killed. And finally, they run into Anakin and his mom, who are slaves. And the first thing they say, well, this isn't right. You shouldn't be slaves. And Qui-Gon's like, wait, we have to save the Queen first. We'll have to come back for these people later. And Kenobi's like, no, I say we start a slave revolt now. It's a perfect time. We can't just leave these people here. And that would show his young exuberance and his idealism. And that's something that people his age would have done. And then he starts the slave revolt anyway against Qui-Gon's wishes, and it causes them even more problems, right? It draws more attention to them, and it causes more chaos. And yes, the slaves are freed, and they free Anakin and his mother, and now they have to take them both along. So it just compounds their problems. So the Jedi need a code like that, and it would have made the first movie very exciting. Forget pod racing. Who the hell needs pod racing? Oh, we need the pod racing so we can win enough money for the magic space carburetor. Oh, you mean the money that you never outlined in the world very well that suddenly we need, and a space carburetor that suddenly you never need? No, that's not the thing. Everybody's trying to kill you. That's the thing. And they're trying to kill you because they want money. And everybody understands that concept. So the Jedi religion is also a set of beliefs and morals that get the Jedi in trouble. And because they stick to their guns, because they stick to their morals, they run into all sorts of problems. Maybe they can't kill people unless they shoot first. Maybe they can only kill bad people. Maybe and as the bounty hunters and whatnot come to look for the queen, guess who is amongst them? Darth Maul, who we've been waiting to see all this time. And rather than fight him in a boring conference room or whatever the hell that thing with the force fields was, they end up fighting him in some place outside in Tatooine where they're trying to save the queen. They got to keep her at bay while they got bounty hunters shooting at them, and they have to fight Darth Maul, and Darth Maul's killing bounty hunters, and I mean, it would have been chaos. It would have been great. What a fantastic ending to the movie. And then they get back to the ship only to discover that Queen's been with them the entire time. They've been risking her life, and they didn't even know. And she's just as good at fighting as the guys, and she's learned all these things. And hey, maybe she's got some force abilities too. And they save Anakin, and maybe they save the mother, maybe they don't. They could do a thing where they have to escape the planet. They put in the space carburetor and they're taking off, and the mother falls out of the ship or gets shot, and they can't go back for her, or else they'll all be killed. Something exciting, something where the stakes are really up there, and that the Jedi religion forces them to always make good choices, and they cannot not make the good choices, regardless of how hard it is. And then, if the mother is left behind, that causes a little bit of anger in Anakin, and you could set up what you're going to do in the other movies. Now, the rest of the movies would play out completely differently. I don't know if the love story was the best way to go. That he was worried, that he kept dreaming she would die, and I don't think that was the way to go. I think it would have been better to do a thing where Anakin and Kenobi go on adventures, and Anakin is just amazing as a Jedi. He is unbeatable as a Jedi, and that makes him arrogant, and he takes it too far. He doesn't want to just free the slaves in one planet. He wants to free all the slaves. He wants to go after every criminal. He is like a man possessed, obsessed with making the world pure. But he takes it too far, and that arrogance causes him to go to the dark side, causes Palpatine sees his opening, and he recruits him. He agrees with him, and they just both take it too far, because they both should be characters who think they're doing good. They see the Jedi as an obstacle in their path. But the Jedi are humble. The Jedi know their limits. Palpatine and eventually Anakin don't see limits. And they take it to the extreme. They say, we're going to bring order to the galaxy, unlike any before. And now we won't have these problems. Another thing to think about, too, with regards to the sequels, is, they had this concept about the clones and the stormtroopers, which is a great concept, by the way. Would have been great to see play out to its logical extreme. The logical extreme, I think, and I'm not going to touch on the sequels too much because I didn't see them and I don't really want to talk about them. But I think the one thing that would have been great is, instead of, say, a character like Finn, a stormtrooper who just switches sides, becoming good, I think it would have been much more effective to have one of the clones. I'm not sure if Finn was a clone. I don't think he was. I think the one of the other guys was the clones, right? So I think keeping the clones around would have been good, and I think having one of the clones make the transformation would have been very effective, because you would have had this situation in which, wait a minute, all these guys are the same. Why is this one clone? Why does he know the Force? Why is he suddenly good? Again, that's the supernatural power of the Force would be taking effect, and maybe that starts to take effect in some of the other clones too, and they just don't understand, how is this happening? It's beyond science. The Force should be way beyond science, way beyond their understanding. And the Empire, or the guys who eventually become the Empire, should be the guys going, no, we're into science. We only see science. We're not spiritual. We don't care. We just want our money and our science, and that's it. Because that makes sense against what is essentially a religion, a religion of, I don't know if you'd call it a religion of peace, but a religion of goodness. You want to set up everybody else as being against it. You want to set up the Jedis always somehow maintain their purity. They are not going to be these guys. And that's another problem I have with the prequels too, without getting too far into it. That Luke, just goes off into a planet and drinks blue milk. Like, that's not a Jedi thing as set up by the first movie. He wouldn't be bothered by that. In fact, the Jedi should be like Christ-like figures. And I'm not saying specifically for the religion, but I mean that, they should be selfless individuals that do only good for people. So a Jedi would be perfectly happy living in a village, just raising a bunch of orphans and protecting them with his lightsaber, and being perfectly fine with that, and spending like 60 years raising orphans and farming, and because that's the kind of purity we want from our heroes, that they're these pure guys who just do these self-sacrificing things. They're willing to die to protect people. They're not off doing other things. They're there to protect. And that was one of the elements in the early Christian religions, right? The early Christians, one of the reasons they became so popular, there's a story where they had an underground church, and a Roman centurion jumped through a window down into the church and landed on the altar. And the priest stood up and said, "Spare the rest and slay me." And the centurion did. And that spread the religion far and wide, because that priest believed he was going to get a great afterlife. He was willing to sacrifice himself. And the flock who survived then said, "Oh, you got to join this religion because that guy died for me." And that's the kind of self-sacrifices we need with Jedi, to keep them pure, to keep them good, so everybody knows that they're always the heroes. You can't taint them. Now they can have struggles, they could question things, and they can certainly have moments, and certainly Anakin is one who goes too far, but he should be the exception, not the rule. It should be that this religion, and I'm saying this strictly from a screenwriting standpoint, this is what it is. It's this pure thing that if you're going to get into the arrogance of the Jedi and how they drop the ball of the Republic, why do we want to see that? Why do we care? That's not the purpose of Star Wars. We want to see thrilling adventures. We want to see the good guys win. So in that world, the Jedi have to remain pure, especially in a movie, because it's too much to explain. Now, if you want to do a TV series getting into the various intrigues and the Jedi councils and whatnot, okay, maybe there'd be different sects, and you could have SECTS, not SEX, and you could have different people and different, and you could get into their wacky religion, whatever you wanted to do. But that's not for a cinematic experience like Star Wars. It should be big. It should be bold. It should be thrilling. It should be about fun, thrills, chills, and the good guys win. Instead, we got sort of a muddled message with the prequels, and kind of a really, really, really muddled message with the sequels. Now, that's based on what I know. I haven't seen them all. It's based on clips and trailers. I've seen enough of them that I know I don't want to see the rest of them because I don't want to be bored for like another 5 hours. But if you can keep in this case, and this is a lesson to take in other screenplays. So if you have this concept like the Jedi, you need to keep that relatively pure. Harry Potter, it's a good example, right? All the wizards, relatively pure. At least the ones out of Hogwarts, right? Now you have a few that they're up to some shenanigans, but they're kind of good guys. But really, it's Voldemort. He's the Darth Vader of that universe. And there are a bunch of guys around him who get corrupted too. But the average wizard is good. And Harry and his friends and most of the people who align with him are good. So there's not a lot of like, gee, is Harry going to go to the dark side of the Force or whatever? We all know he's not. We all know Ron's not, or Hermione. So that's the kind of delineation you need in a screenplay with regards. I mean, and magic's not religion, or maybe it is. But that's the kind of delineation you need in your screenplay. You need to keep the good guys good and the bad guys bad.